So these notes are 1.2 simple random sampling. It's associated with section 1.2 in your textbook. We have 3 goals for today, and you're going to write those in an abbreviated version in your table of contents. So it'll look something like this. We're doing work on 817, Unit 1. Our assignment, our homework tonight is Math Excel 1.2. And then I just wrote our 3 goals in an abbreviated version. So basically, the statement would read, I can, and then the full goal says on your paper, distinguish between a census and a simple random sample. So by the end of this time today, you should be able to tell the difference between the two. Number 2, recognize best practices for obtaining a representative sample. Number 3, use a random number table and a random number generator to obtain a sample. So if you're filling in these notes, that first set of blanks, when studies are conducted, whether observational or designed experiments, right, those are the things we talked about yesterday. Both of those, they're just 2 different kinds of studies. Subjects for a sample are selected. And there are a variety of different ways to collect a sample. Today's focus is simple random sampling. They're just abbreviated versions of the goals on the paper. So if you didn't get those, you can abbreviate those on your own. I have tasked you today with using your textbook to find a few terms. I've given you a few, and I'm asking you to find a few. And you'll see those within the context of examples. Look through those different examples. I find those to be really helpful. So you're on your own. You'll want to find section 1.2, first page of section 1.2 in your book, to find census. Read over the ones that are already filled in. Don't just skip over them. Find simple random sampling. Define that one. Find simple random sample. On the back, you'll find simple random sampling with replacement and without replacement. You'll define representative sample. That one's a big one. Read all of this information. And then I'm actually going to go over that last problem on the page while we're all kind of on the same page using a random number table. So as I mentioned, there's different methods for collecting data. If we're using simple random sampling, a random number table is one way to get a random assortment of items, subjects for your study. And here's how it works. Can I have a volunteer to read this scenario, this example? Thanks, Sally.
During one semester, Professor Hassett wanted to sample the attitudes of students taking college algebra at his school. He decided to interview 15 out of 228 students enrolled in the course. Using a registration list on the which the 228 students were numbered 1 to 228, he obtained a random sample of 15 students by randomly selecting 15 students between 1 and 728. So he used the random number table that appears in the appendix as a table table 1 shown below. First, we need to select a random starting point by closing your eyes and putting your finger on the table. Let's all go with.
Okay, thank you. So this is, we have 728 students, right? And we want a sample of 15 of them. But we don't just want to ask the first 15 that show up to class or the first 15 who respond to the email. We truly want it to be a random assortment of students. So this is one way to generate a list of numbers. Each student is associated with a number, right? So you literally just put your finger down on the page. I happen to land at 978. So we're starting with 978. We'll all just go with the same one for the sake of following along with this example. This is weird. Just so you know, it's a weird process. So if you feel like, hey, this is weird while I'm going over it, you're right. Just bear with me till I get through to the end, and I think you'll have a clearer picture if you just kind of acknowledge it's weird, but it works. So we're actually, since we want 3-digit numbers, since 728 is a 3-digit number, and we want numbers up to 728, I'm actually going to section off my 3-digit numbers so that I can clearly see them. And any number that I see that is, I'm going to go down, okay, down this column. Any number that I see that is between 1 and 728, I'm going to write it down. Okay, so 978 doesn't work. 689 works, so I'm going to write that number down, 689. Then the next number down is 410, 667, 707, 760 is too high, 986 too high, 836 is too high, 783. We go down to 547. And then 20, 34, 21, 412. Next, it's like a hook. We go back up and find the next 3-digit numbers, starting with 434. So you see it kind of goes back up to find your next number. So 433. 433 is our next number. And we're just going to go up this column. So see 986, too high. 119, so 119, that'll be our next number. And then 893, too high, and then 10. And then 58. And then 80. Did I go up? Thank you, 380. I crossed out the 3. How many numbers do we have? 1, 2, 3. One more? Great. Thanks, Jacob Sawtell. 380 and then 542. So now I have a list of numbers, and each number is associated with a person. So I'm going to call up person number 689 on the roster, ask them my survey questions, and then find person number 410 on the roster, call them up and ask my survey questions, and then I collect my data, and then I have information then to complete a study, right? To analyze that data and then report that data and then make inferences if I feel like that's a good representative sample. Jill? Down at the very bottom here, after 412, I went back up those next 3 columns. Do you see how right next to 412, the next 3 numbers are 433?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's how I found it. In your homework assignment, you'll have one question, and the table's laid out a little bit differently, and it's just numbers in rows. And it says, hey, check out this row. Check out row 2. And in that case, you just look across row 2, starting with the first number, and use those random numbers. So random number tables can change in terms of how they're used based on the instructions. So just be careful to read those instructions. It should make sense. All right. The rest of this you can fill out on your own. So I'll let you go ahead and get started on that.
So where do we find the